Welcome to part 3 of my State of the Collection in January 2021. Hi, welcome back to Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville and welcome to part 3 of my 4-part series on the state of my watch collection in January 2021. Okay, so quick recap. Part 1 was kind of the rules about how I go about collecting. Part 2 was looking at my vintage Alpina collection. Part 3 is looking at my modern tool and travel watches. So that's what we're talking about today. Now, when I'm talking about my tool and travel watches, that can further be broken down really into another 3 categories. There's general everyday dive watches, sports watches, pilot's watches, that sort of thing, and I'll talk about that first. Then I've got a very special or specific sort of subgroup of Seiko Prospex dive watches, which I'll talk about as a separate group again. And then I've finally got my travel watches, which are generally all GMTs. I should remind myself, I forgot to do this in my first video. All the watches today are automatic. There are certainly no quartz, and off the top of my head, there's no, I'm 99.9% sure there's no manual winds in here either. Anyway, look, this is a long video, so we'll get into it and I'll see you at the other end. Okay, lots of watches to get through today, so we'll try and do this quickly. This is the Alpina Star Timer Automatic Pilot, the watch that turned me from a guy that owned one nice watch for a milestone into someone that had a collection of watches, and into someone who made this as a hobby and something I wanted to do. From the moment I saw this, I loved it and I continue to love it. One thing you'll note is there's a few Alpinas coming, and one of the reasons for that is that I don't think there's a single brand which gives this level of design and quality at this price range. I think I had seen other watches before I saw this one, from the Swatch Group and other brands, but none of them had really made me fall in love with them to the point that I thought, that's it, that's something I want. This watch is the watch that did that showed me that there were watches that were special, that had a quality that I could really love and that I could afford. And this watch led me to buying this watch, another watch which I discussed very briefly yesterday. This is the Alpina Seastrong Heritage, the modern interpretation of the Seastrong 10, which I showed in the part 2 of this State of the Collection video. Very closely based on the original, a little bit bigger. They played with a few things here and there, but kept the overall design pretty consistent. Again, definitely kept that sort of quality and price ratio exceptionally high. I don't think there's a single watch that comes close to this in terms of quality at this price range. This watch then led me to buy this watch, yet another Alpina. I haven't mentioned it yet, but one of the factors that joins the Pilot, the Seastrong Heritage and this Seastrong Diver together is not just the brand, but in fact they all came from the same AD. They all came from the now defunct 8th Avenue watches. I didn't realize at the time that they were going broke, and I think that may have helped a little bit with the quality price ratio, as some of the discounts they were giving probably skewed my belief. But I still think that today, on the kinds of prices you can get for these sorts of watches, they're exceptional value, even though value is not something I really like thinking about. Exceptional quality for what they're going to cost you. How's that? So this is the Seastrong Diver. One of the things I like about it is that it's so clean, so itself, so nothing. It's no other kind of watch. It is absolutely all of its own thing, and it's a watch of today, not a watch which is trying to recreate some memory of yesterday. All of which means that I just continue to love this watch. Another watch, and the last watch, totally different brand, but similar kind of philosophy. This is the Edox Hydro Sub. actually came from the same dealer, 8th Avenue watches. Well, actually, no, I tell a lie. This particular watch did not. I wanted to buy an Edox Hydra sub from them, but by the time I got to it, they'd gone broke. So I bought this one off eBay from a very nice Korean man, but it's got the same kind of qualities that really attracted me to the Alpina. An individual design that doesn't reference 1,000 other people's work or that doesn't constantly hark back to the past. A level of design, effort, and construction far beyond its the kinds of prices that they ask for it. But combine all that with a history of a real brand that's been around forever. So again, I just love this watch. It's actually one of my go-to watches. And yeah, it gets a lot of wear and it's not going anywhere ever. But now for something completely different. 1, has no 8th Avenue connections. 2, is German. 3, isn't a dive or aviation watch. This is my Muhle Glashutte M99 City. Why have I got this watch? Because I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try something unusual. I went to Chrono24, put a bunch of different search criteria in. A lot of watches came out, and this one really struck me as being odd. It wasn't that expensive, and so I gave it a try, and I fell in love with it and the brand and all sorts of things. I just love the kind of combination of flash and flare and hardcore tool usefulness. It's a balance that I found so appealing that I ended up buying a second Muhle Glashutte. This one, the Muhle Glashutte M29 Casual. This has a serial number in the single figures. I saw this watch, was instantly intoxicated with it, and wanted to have it as quickly as I could. My local AD helped me out on this with a whole bunch of things. The AD for this one was time-only watches, and Fabio was a huge help. So a retailer I would strongly recommend if you're in the market for some sort of German watch especially. Again, it's kind of like the M99, but just updated and made an even stronger impression on me. So I just bought this one instantly. Again, love it to pieces, and it's a very frequent flyer on my wrist. And my last of the general kind of tool watches, one I've had for a little while. This is my Breitling Super Ocean Iron Man edition. This is the only watch I've ever bought at full retail, no discount. Only 300 of these made, and the minute I saw it, I was on the phone to the AD asking if it would be possible to get one. They said yes, as long as I made a deposit today. I made that deposit on the not sure if I was going to give that deposit up or not. The next day they were sold out, and so I proceeded with it and have loved it ever since. Interestingly, I think this is actually the only no-date version of the Super Ocean. If there are others, let me know. Like I said, I absolutely love this for many of the same reasons I like the other watches I've called out. It's very much its own thing. It's not referencing 1,000 other watches or time frames from a long time ago. It's modern, it's clean, it's, like I say, it's all its own thing, and I just love it to pieces. Now you're about to see a lot of divers, starting with an XKX. This is not a watch I love, but I have this for a very specific reason. I'm a big Seiko fan. Not because of my time in watches, but from my time as a diver. When I was diving back in the 80s and early 90s, the Seiko was kind of, I hesitate to say, but I'd say the real dive watch used by normal people that weren't trying to prove anything. I remembered when I was looking for a dive watch, and this is pre-dive computer, it was just drummed into us. You just want something simple, reliable, that's always going to work. And the dive instructor I was with and everyone I was diving with at the time said, well, forget your fancy European stuff, just go with Seiko. And so that's what I did. And I was enormously happy with it the entire time I dived. And so when I got back into watches, I wanted to keep that going. And here I am, having bought an XKX, which I kind of like, but not really. There's something about the case design and everything which never really sang to me. And I keep this now largely because it sets off the next part of my collection, which is nothing but Seiko Prospex divers. So now from the SKX, which I never really loved, I then went to the Save the Oceans Turtle, which is a really mixed bag for me. It is possibly one of the most comfortable watches I've ever worn. It is a beautiful shape and lovely on the wrist, but that cushion case isn't something that really sings to me and isn't entirely what I was looking for. And because Seikos aren't very expensive, I was able to then try something else pretty quickly and then go to the Samurai. You'll notice something here. I have a bit of a thing about orange face divers if I can find one. Now this is kind of like a completely different design approach for Seiko. What we're concentrating on here is much more angular, much more kind of constructivist, I'd say. And it is a design aesthetic which does appeal to me more. So I do like the Samurai a fair bit more than I like the Turtle, but it still wasn't completely what I was after. So, and again, keeping with the theme going, that Seiko divers are not expensive and you can always try a new one. I then had a go at this watch, the Seiko Monster. Now, it just so happened that at the exact time I was looking for a Monster, this special edition Fang version, I think it's called, was available on Chrono 24. It was available at quite a cheap price, and so I picked it up. And again, it's like the other two watches, the Turtle and the Samurai. I like it. There's elements of it that I love and I really enjoy wearing it, but it's still not quite what I was looking for. And so the search continued to find the Seiko diver that was everything I kind of had built a Seiko diver up to be. And then I found it. The SBD series, I've said this before on other videos. I believe the SBDC series is kind of like peak Seiko. It's where Seiko really comes into its own. And this particular model, sometimes called the Baby Marine Master, is just a wonderful piece of work. That aluminium dial, that kind of petrol colored almost blue, maybe that's just an Australian thing, but that blue is just amazing. I love it to pieces. The white crisp dials, the white crisp indices and hands against the sheer plain matte black, just again really enticing, really wonderful. But more than anything, it's that case, it's that beautifully sculpted case design. Now this is interesting. This watch, the SBDCs, is where we jump from 4 series movements to 6 series movements. But the change in movement actually isn't that significant to me. I think what's huge is when Seiko make that jump in movement, they accompany it with a massive jump in case quality, both in terms of design and execution. And I believe this is kind of where I love to be with Seiko divers. And I like this one so much that I ended up buying another watch at that level, which is the Seiko Sumo, new version, Seiko Sumo Grey Dawn Edition. Now, this originally came on a bracelet. I don't think divers should be on bracelets. I think a real diver should always be on rubber. So I immediately changed this to a rubber strap, color-coded it with the second hand, which I think works really well. And again, you see that everything I was talking about with the case design really steps up when you're into this SBDC 6R movement fitted watch. I just love it. I love the not having crown guards. It's just a really clean, well designed, good looking, very functional. This is just a watch I absolutely cherish owning and wearing. Okay, so that marks the end of my kind of general tool and dive watches. Now we're into travel watches. This is the watch, a Frederick Constant Classic Index GMT, that I bought myself for my 50th birthday. I bought this watch because A, I wanted a watch, but B, I wanted something that captured my love of travel, and a GMT kind of does that for me. So I ended up buying this watch as the ultimate versatile piece. Screw down crown, 100 meters water resistant, dressy enough that you can wear it any time you want. casual enough that you can also wear it anytime you want. It's kind of the last piece. It's both the first watch I bought and the last piece I bought where versatility was kind of a big thing for me. Everything after this watch, after I decided I was going to have more than one, became a case of just getting something that did the thing it did really well. But this is the watch that really got me into this hobby at all. It's, as I say, it's the first watch I ever bought. Love it to pieces. Baby it a bit because it is such a milestone watch for me as well. But immediately after I bought this and after I bought a couple of the other Alpinas, I wanted to get back into buying some travel stuff. I also wanted to experiment with a micro brand. At this point, I hadn't really, you'll see, I don't think I've mentioned a micro brand yet. Boulder had come on the scene and they'd introduced this, the Boulder Globetrotter GMT. It's a watch that is utterly unlike anything else. It is a massive brutalist piece of architecture of a watch, and I love it for that. It's, again, common with a lot of watches, unlike pretty much anything else there on the market. It's Swiss movement, automatic, true GMT. I hate that expression. It is a GMT watch. It does everything it's supposed to do. It's, yeah, really, really nice. You'll note it's actually also on a bracelet. This watch head is so heavy. It's the only watch I've got which stays on a bracelet because it frankly cannot go on anything else and feel remotely sensible on the wrist. Having experimented with a micro brand, I went back to a more traditional Swiss brand, and this was Fortis. So I went with the Fortisflieger. Again, I love my tool watches. This aviation background, the watch, kind of the aviation feel of this watch really sang to me. And yeah, it's simple, but it's beautifully executed. It fits really well with kind of my feeling about myself and my lifestyle. And again, and every time I look at it, it really reminds me of going away with work more than a home trip. And so, but that's a good thing. I enjoy traveling with work. After having bought that, I then stumbled upon this. I had started thinking more about Breitling and was kind of taken aback by the negative attitudes there were to Breitling in the industry, or in the sort of social media area. And there was all this commentary about how Breitling watches are too big and too glossy and a whole bunch of, and too macho. And that didn't fit with my memory of sort of Breitling from when I was, a kid growing up. And as soon as I went searching, I immediately went to the kinds of watches I remembered from when I was much younger, which led me to this, the Breitling Antares World Timer, another GMT, only 38 millimeters. So everyone who ever talks about Breitlings being huge just leaves, I don't understand. They're not. They're normal size to a little bit small. I acknowledge some of the bigger ones the newer ones are bigger, but they don't have to be. And for me, this is classic Breitling. This is the sort of thing I love. Having said that, I didn't immediately buy another Breitling. I went to this. Now, this is a watch I had seen on the net. This is a Bell & Ross Aviation Series, or BR03 GMT. I'd seen this on the net, like lots of people, fallen in love with it. Love the boldness of the design. Loved how clean it is, how they really balance the sort of, I'll say, almost architectural features of the case with then not even merging, sorry, having this hard line between something very square but then becomes very round and curved. The case finishing is astounding. Just the quality of this watch overall is remarkable. And so thank you very much, Adam. I continue to love this watch and I can't see it going anywhere ever. Now we're going to talk about actually my single most recent acquisition, a watch I bought just a few weeks ago. Again, funnily enough, also from a friend, but different friend. Thank you very much, John, for this watch. This is the Breitling Avenger Night Mission GMT. I'd mentioned before about how Breitlings didn't have to be big. Well, this one is. It's 44 millimeters, not massive on the wrist though. It is titanium, so it's remarkably light. It's ostensibly an aviation watch, but it's got 300 meters water resistance like a diver. But at the same time, it's, even though it's titanium, it's still only a little bit over 12 millimeters thick. So it's this amazing combination of enormous capability, a lot of wrist presence, very light and very thin. So it's an incredibly wearable watch that at the same time really just stands out and makes a really big, bold statement. I love the finishing on this dial. I love the coloration. It's got a very, it fits in with that kind of very military, sandy kind of feel. I think if it had been all white, it wouldn't have quite carried it off correctly. All in all, I just love this watch. Still very much in the honeymoon phase of it, but I can't see me losing the love of this watch anytime soon. So that was it. They're my modern tool and travel watches. Hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned for part 4 of this series, which is going to be all the other bits and pieces that are sort of part of my collection. Things which are of sentimental value, things which are mementos of certain stuff, experiments that I've bought for the channel, and just crazy watches that seemed fun at the time and didn't cost me very much. I've been Pete McConville. This has been Not So Obvious Watches, and I'll see you later. Bye.